Big video today, everybody. Big video. So, a couple of things are going on here, right? Number one, this is a part one of a two-part series on buying and selling used gear. I've had several people ask me to make a video about this because I primarily buy used gear and I've had great experiences doing so. So, how do you do it? That's what's in this video. Number two, this is my first collaboration. I'm doing it with Sine Craft, who is another headphone reviewer. He's got a lot of experience in the hobby. He also primarily buys used gear, so I thought it would be excellent to make this more of a conversation, and that way you can get a couple of different perspectives on how to go about doing that in this hobby. Number three, this is the first video coming out on this channel since it's reached 1,000 subscribers. So thank you to everyone who's subscribed. I really appreciate it. And, if you're not subscribed, watch for a little bit. Consider it, please. Like it makes me feel good, honestly, about doing it, and it makes me want to do more videos. So if you find it useful, like it, subscribe it. And then also, this is a little bit different. Normally I do reviews and things like that, but this is more of like a podcast conversation type of a thing. So, give some feedback. What do you think? Is it good? Is it entertaining? Should it just be a podcast, no video? Did we miss things? I don't know. What do you think? Comment down below. But after you're done with this video, please consider going over to Sinecraft's channel, checking out his reviews. They're excellent. And again, there's part two, which is selling, and that's over on his channel. So definitely go check that out as well. And just again, thank you for being here. Enjoy the conversation, and I hope you get something out of it. Thanks. Okay, so we decided to get together because we both found out that we buy mainly used gear, right? Like that's why we made this connection kind of in the first place. So, like, why don't you go ahead and start off? Why do you buy used gear? Like, what sent you down that path? Why used instead of new?
Yeah, no, that's a good. I mean, that's the crux of it. So, money is going to be the driver of a lot of this, right? So, I like a lot of people in this hobby. Like, I love to try things. Like, I'm really interested to audition a lot of things. Like, part of it's about discovery. Part of it's about sort of rewiring my brain to hear in new ways that I didn't before I heard that particular headphone or that particular amp. Where you go, oh, I thought about this like that, but really it's like this. And so moving through a lot of gear has been a way for me to understand what I like and what I maybe want to end up with in my system. And that I am not made of money. I am not a bottomless pit of funds. And so, especially as you start to creep up the ladder and want to try things with higher and higher price tags, you know, the buying something MSRP at retail and then, trying it for whatever, 3 weeks, half a year, whatever your lifespan is, and then selling it on, that comes with taking a massive depreciation hit on the item. So getting into the used market allows you to sort of somebody, sorry, but somebody else has taken that hit for you, that
Right? Yeah.
immediate 20, 30, 40% hit on the item. And if you're savvy about it, I feel like you can try a lot more gear that way. So for me, that's the ultimate driver, is like it's the opportunity to try more stuff than I could afford to really try otherwise. Does that sort of resonate for you, or do you
Yeah.
come at it from a different perspective?
No, no, it's very much the same thing. I mean, I think if we equate it to, like, buying a used car, right? I mean, it's the same idea. I think everybody's familiar with that idea of, like, as soon as you drive it off the lot, it depreciates 20% or whatever that number is. I mean, well, it used to. Pre-COVID, that's what would happen anyway. I don't know anymore what's going on with that, but, yeah, no, I'm kinda like a cheapskate, really. I mean, and, like, I come from that idea of always trying to get the most for my dollar, and I like to try, I don't know. I'm just too curious. So I buy stuff, I sell stuff. I've always been that way in like any hobby I'm in, and it gets me in trouble a lot of times, but I find
am paying attention and I buy things at a good price, that I tend to be able to sell them and not lose a ton of money. Or even if I do really well, sometimes I can make money sometimes, which is always awesome. But I mean, that's certainly a rare occasion, but every now and then you snag those like fantastic deals where you can do stuff like that. And so it just, for me, it just makes sense. And I've had enough luck with it. Like, I guess I never had a really bad burn on buying used stuff, like whether I'm talking about cars, headphone gear, paintball gear was kind of my first buying and selling ordeal, like when I was younger. And I've never been burned really bad. So I've always just felt like it's worked really well for me. And I've had no reason to go hunting out new stuff when I feel like I can pick things up cheaper and sell them for basically what I bought them for. So that's why I
Yeah.
do it. And it's allowed me to try lots and lots and lots of stuff. And one thing I was thinking about while I was kind of prepping for this is it it makes me try stuff that I wouldn't have normally tried either. So I think I'm willing to pay new prices for very specific things. But sometimes if I'm just like browsing what's for sale, on the forums, and I just go, oh, that seems like a good deal and that looks interesting, I'll try it.
Yep.
Whereas if I was just looking at new, like there's no way I would try a lot of the things that I've tried. So I just it makes it just, it's more of a treasure hunt that way. It makes it a little more fun than just like clicking the
Yep.
buy button.
Yeah, you get it's that curiosity thing where, you know, and we should probably talk about kind of where you hunt. What are your hunting grounds for, where do you find that most of the gear you buy? Because I know, I think you and I are both, HeadFi members,
Yep.
and that's, for if you're into on-head audio gear, that's kind of one of the best spots. And, that ability to kind of go in and just sort of browse around and have that sense of discovery where you see a piece that you're like, what is that? I've never even heard of this crazy company, like this crazy Austrian, like what is that? And you sort of dig into it and you go down the rabbit hole and you read about this
You'll watch
engineer who
like
designed it.
14
And yeah,
reviews on it.
yeah. And like I love that like sense of like I, I don't buy everything that I sort of investigate, but it's really fun to just see it, know that you could have it, and then learn about it and then decide if it's something that makes sense. Versus like watching the scroll go by and you're like, oh, I know I want that. I know that's a great price, and snatching it up. So both sides of that are really fun in my mind.
Yeah, well, and I think I too personally, like, something about my personality, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's like I kind of enjoy being the person that has something different. So
Hmm.
I know there's lots of situations in life where like there's very specific, like a couple of clear choices. If you're buying a smartphone, you can buy an iPhone or you can buy a Samsung, and they're good and they're going to be solid and you're probably going to be fine. But like sometimes you just want to be the odd duck out, right? And you want to have something a little bit different, maybe something that you can have a conversation with somebody about because they will be curious about it. And that's kind of the way I like to approach things too. But yeah, HeadFi is probably the biggest, just because I think that's where most of the traffic is for this type of gear. I like HiFi Guides forums as well. It's not nearly as established as far as like a feedback system and all of that, but it's a pretty tight community that I still haven't had any issues with. More recently, I've dabbled in AV Exchange on Reddit.
Hmm.
I've only made a couple of transactions there, but I'm playing on that field too. And then of course Amazon and eBay are always options. I feel like that's more if you're looking for something specific though. Like I kind of look on those places. It's not necessarily where you'll find a treasure, like kind of out of the blue. Those would
Yeah.
those would be more on the forums, but I mean, in those, the potential for deals there, I think, are less too, just because there's so many eyes on those things. But like one strategy that I've used that's a little bit different is just like on Amazon, I'll put stuff on my wish list, right? Like a set of headphones on my wish list that I'm curious in. And like every now and then there's like a screaming open box deal that'll come
Mm.
along, and I'll be able to pick something up for like literally almost like half price.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that's almost more the like the dealer or open box, right? And that so um, a couple other I'd mention is US Audio Mart. is pretty good, and there's a Canadian counterpart of that. And if you don't mind, again, it's like, what's your risk tolerance? Now you're starting to deal with an international sale, but they're just our neighbors to the north. I've had some good deals with some folks in Canada.
Yeah, I've had a
And then
couple of
there's
deals with Canada. That seems to be a pretty smooth international deal as far as that goes. I haven't had
yeah,
any issues there. I've done a couple of like overseas deals, but there's I don't know, shipping gets really expensive and it's probably
yeah.
just not worth the hassle most of the time. But maybe if you're looking for something very specific, I
Yeah, if there's a
wouldn't.
piece that's like super popular in Europe, like, I mean, a lot of the great audio companies are not American, right? And they're
Yeah,
not based in Asia, and they don't have big distribution channels into the US. So it's like some of this gear just doesn't really make it to our shores. You'll read, the great reviews of something, and then you'll find out that it's like, oh, if you lived in the UK, or France or Germany, like these things come up all the time, but you're just not going to see them in the US. So you kind of gotta put yourself out there if you want to try it.
yeah. I mean, and I suppose we should probably specify that we both live in the U.S. because
Yeah.
I know, there are certain very specific companies like Shit, for instance, is like if you're an American, it's just so much easier to get your hands on
Mhm.
that gear. So yeah, probably by country there are different things that would be easier or more difficult to acquire, just
Yeah.
depending.
I've looked at some at AudioGone as well, done a couple deals there, but that tends to be more two-channel oriented, less HeadFi kind of stuff, and it's usually pretty high-end things, so it can get kind of pricey. But you know, I use a service called HiFi Shark, which is totally free service, and you can just build searches based on keyword searches, and it goes out and it looks at everything we've mentioned and like a dozen other sites, and just kind of gives you a feed, and I'll put together an email for you and say like, look, here's all the Denifrep stuff that we saw come up yesterday, here's all the ZMF stuff, here's all that stuff. It's not it doesn't kind of give you the warm and fuzzies of going to the sites and poking around and falling down a rabbit hole and discovering something. But you sort of know there's something you want and you're not just kind of trying to wander into a new discovery. It's a super helpful tool. A lot of the gear I've had has come through that connection.
Yeah, I've never used that myself. I have on a lot of these sites you can set up. Oh man, I can't think of what it's called. When you set up, like if they post something specific, it'll like trigger a
Like an alert.
response to you. Yeah, an alert
Yeah.
to you. So like most of these places have built-in features like that, which I've used every now and then. But for me, I'm usually more of a just like, in the evening when I get home, I'll have a beer or whatever, and I'll just kind of pop on the forums and just kind of scroll and just see what's there. That's more my strategy.
Yeah.
I will say though, like part of getting a good deal is you have to be ready, like when you see it,
Yeah.
like you have to be ready to pull the trigger, especially if it's a good price.
Yeah.
Because I know there are certain things that like, I've literally messaged within, like half an hour and it's already been sold just because it was like a screaming deal.
Yeah.
And so like what's your strategy of like if you have a specific piece of gear that you're looking for? Do you have like a technique that you use? Or I know one thing that we wanted to talk about is like how do you know what price you want to look
hmm
for?
Yeah,
Just
figuring out pricing is really it's a bit of art, it's a bit of science, right? So it's definitely like I'll use HiFi Shark and I'll kind of watch over time if there's a piece of gear I want. And it's tough if it's a rare piece of gear that just doesn't come up that much, then you're not really going to have any historical data. The other thing about HiFi Shark, and there's not an ad for them, is that when you do a search, you can see what's available with that search, and then you can also see historical
mm,
listings for that search. And some people like will zero out their posting after things sell, which I
yeah.
think is so asinine.
No, I
Um,
don't I don't do that ever. I think there needs to be a clear history of
yeah,
pricing. Like
yeah, I
I
mean,
think that's just better for the community if it exists.
yeah, for sure. So anyway, I think it's just spending time. Honestly, it's like I like to see an item come up a few times. I like what it goes for. Whatever price it got negotiated down a little bit, unless it was just like a hot deal, right? Like
Yeah.
so ZMF stuff is interesting to watch, right? Because it usually sells very quickly. And that's because there's a supply and demand thing. I mean, I sort of meant to mention this in the why buy used, but there's just some things you just can't get. Like you can't get timely new, right?
Yep.
Like I love Deckwear, I love ZMF, I love a lot of these brands that are very boutiquey. Donald North Audio, right? You want one of his amps, it's a year plus waiting list. It's like that. I'm not that patient. So for those special pieces, like used is maybe your only option. And that sort of segues into this thinking about the actual like specific forums and sites of those brands, right? So you're talking about open box, right? So
Oh
HiFiMan,
yeah.
right? They've got their own web store where they put a lot of their open box stuff. So
And they're pretty good
Deckwear
deals
is,
too, a lot of times. Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah,
Odyssey does like, but again, you have to know when those sales are going live too for a lot of that stuff. Cause I know like Odyssey's, like I was trying to get a cheap pair of LCD2s and like, I think maybe Black Friday or maybe they released it the day before Black Friday or something. And they were gone like, I mean, like minutes,
yeah.
So you have to kind of, I mean, that's how you get a good deal, right? You have to pay attention. You have to be kind of patient.
Hmm.
You have to kind of watch, and you got to have your cash ready to go.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? It's like you have to be ready to go, but you also have to be patient,
Yeah.
right? Because there are those times where you get sort of irritated that the thing you want isn't coming up, and then it comes up and it's like the wrong price, and you know it's the wrong price, but you start trying to talk yourself into it,
Yeah.
or like it's got some flaw where you're like, oh, I'll never be able to resell it because it's B stock or it's got a crack or whatever. Um, and we can talk about how much of that stuff you accept or reject. That's kind of a personal choice. But yeah, you have to know when the deal's not a good deal and not get yourself into it because you just can't get out of it. I mean, that's the problem. You
Yeah.
want to turn around and sell this thing, like you're gonna have to eat that
And
if you're
that's the
off the
thing
market.
too, right? Is like you have to convince yourself that you can wait for it. If you ever get in the mindset that you've got to have it now, you just got to accept that you're probably not going to get the best deal unless like the planets just like align for you, but
Yeah.
like I'd say a lot of it is just patience and waiting for the right one to come along and then being ready to jump on it.
How do
Or
you like?
setting in your head, like a lot of times in my head, I go, I will buy that if I see it for this price,
Hmm.
And so I wait. That's like my new favorite amp is the Singzer SA1, which I'm just loving, but it's a $600 amp. And I was like, well, if I see it for like under 450, I'll buy it, and then one came up for 400 and I was like, got it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I've waited probably like 2 months. Like I known I wanted to try it for like a couple months, but I waited and I waited
yeah,
until it came around for the price that I was willing to pay. And
yeah.
so it did. But I mean, too, I like your point about, sometimes you just can't get it. I think Shit, I just think is a really interesting company right now because, their stuff is relatively affordable, but yet they like can't meet demand at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at like 2 months, 3 months to get a new shit amp or DAC or any of that stuff. So
I mean,
yeah,
you see how that affects pricing. Like it's when, pre-COVID, when supply chain was really good, you know, the shit stuff was always like pretty discounted when you get it
hmm
used. Like it took a
yeah,
pretty big depreciation
yeah,
hit. And then I was looking for one of their two-channel amps. I think it's the Azure, and the prices went up to almost the price of new
yep.
because it was more than 2 months. I think the wait list was much longer than that. So there's all these like things pushing the market all the time, and like
So yeah,
trying to
so
pay
maybe
attention to
that's
that stuff
just
helps.
just talking about like patience and all that, but just being informed as to what the situation is with that company. If
Yeah.
if you know what the supply and demand is, that is going to help you make a more informed purchase, like when you're looking, and it'll
Yeah.
probably inform the price you're willing to pay too.
So what are like the fears? I think a lot of people are very hesitant to get into buying used gear, right? Because it's out of warranty. Is this seller legit? Is there something I didn't see in the photos that I'm going to be bummed out about? I can't return it if I don't like it, like some retail, like you can't always return audio gear, but a lot of places you can. Um, what are like, how would you counsel somebody who's coming to you with like a head full of fear about this stuff? Or should you? Is it maybe just not the right thing for them if it's too like too
Yeah.
anxiety inducing? Like, who cares? Don't do it. Buy new.
You know,
But
that's
is like,
that's
how
an
would you counsel?
interesting thought. Like I guess everybody has their different comfort levels. I mean, I think warranty seems to be a big one. Um, but like for me, I guess it isn't just because I've literally like out of dozens, I don't know, maybe hundreds at this point, headphones and pieces of audio gear. I think I've had one like fail on me. Just like that was like I have no idea why it failed, right? Um, the other ones like my dog chewed the cord off or something, something like that happened where I'm like, it was obviously my fault. So I mean, I think the warranty thing, like for me, my experience is usually people in this hobby take extremely good care of their gear.
Yeah.
Like almost and if they don't, like, you can pretty much tell from the photos almost instantaneously. Like, you can look at a photo usually and be like, "That's obviously a well taken care of." Or they'll say if they name every specific scratch or dent on it and they show them in the photos and it's like you can't even see it, but they've deliberately taken a photo of it, you're like, "All right, it's probably fine."
Yeah.
And I guess for me, I'm not the type of person that needs my stuff to be perfect. I drive used vehicles. I didn't build a new house. I just bought a house and things don't have to be perfect for me. If you're the type of person where you feel like everything has to be perfect or like it would freak you out if you had somebody else's like hair on a pad or something like that, and you're not comfortable just, like taking a lint roller and rolling it off
Yeah.
or some tape and getting it off. If that's you, then you're probably like maybe stay away from the used market. But I think all in all, make sure you're looking at photos, and getting
Yeah.
a clear picture of what's there. Ask questions, if you're concerned about it, and just double check. But I don't know. For me, I just haven't run into enough trouble that I worry about it all that much. I think generally people in this hobby want to help each other, and they're like a lot of times people are selling gear at very reasonable prices just because they're happy to pass it along to somebody to try it out.
Yeah.
And in general, they're being upfront and they're taking care of their stuff and I feel like people are generally concerned that I'm like happy with my transaction with them when I do it.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
following up with me, they're giving me tracking number. Oh, it looks like it got there. Did you get it? Is everything good? Like that's 90% of my transactions have been like that. So
Yeah.
I think as long as like the person's a good communicator, if you send them a message, do they respond in a decent amount of time? Is the grammar, okay? Like, do they seem like just like kind of are they pleasant and cordial in their messaging? Like, I think all those things pretty much tell you like it's probably going to be a decent transaction.
Yeah, for sure. I think how the description is written, like if, like you said, if people are coming out and revealing flaws and trying to be really transparent about it, if they tell you, I'm the first owner, I'm the second owner, I think it's about this old, I don't know, like I've never had any troubles with it. I have the original packaging, I have the original this, like
Original
those,
packaging. That's
yeah,
a key piece right there.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I basically don't buy anything that doesn't have original packaging, unless it
Well,
just was wacky and was like a boutique thing and it was made and the original packaging was a random cardboard box that I don't care about. But
because again, if it has the original packaging, that tells you that the person that owned it like cared enough about it to like save that. It's probably
yeah,
specifically because they thought maybe they'd sell it down the road. That's how I am. Like I
oh yeah,
save all that stuff that way. When I go to sell it, I can be like, "Yep, it's got the original packaging. It's got all the accessories. Like you don't have anything to worry about. There's nothing weird going on here." You know.
well, and don't we all want that, right? We would love to buy new stuff all the time, right? It would be fantastic if like money was no object to have that like great experience when you first get a new thing and you open it up and it's got the little sack that it comes in and the cable's tied up nicely and all that. Like that's a special moment. There's a reason there's thousands of unboxing videos on YouTube, right? People
That's
enjoy that
true.
part of the process. So it's like if the thing's kind of just like wrapped up in a sheet and shoved in a box and like that's how it comes to me, I mean, it's fine. If the thing's still great, the thing's still great. But like I'd love it if somebody took the time to save this the packaging, put it back in there relatively how they got it, so that I get a little bit of that joy of the almost new. pre-owned but almost new experience.
I do. I tell you, there's a lot of this gear that I've bought used, like it comes and I'm like, wow, this is just like this is exactly like it came new. Like I'm shocked at how good of condition it's in most of the time. Like most of the time it's very good condition. Most of the time people have taken the time to package it well. Like I've just had such good success. Like I think that's why I wanted to do this video, I think, is just because it's a way to get into the hobby and to try more things out, and it lowers the cost and it lowers the barriers to doing that. And I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, synergy of gear is so critical, right? Like, does this DAC with this amp with this headphone, is that the magical combination? Or these tubes in this amp with that headphone? Like, there's so many little variables, cables, whatever. Obviously, parts of that chain make a bigger difference than other parts of that chain. But it's like the idea that you're going to get it just right to your personal taste in the first pair of headphones, amp, and DAC you buy is very unlikely. Because you don't even know yet. You haven't even heard these things that are going to teach your brain how you like to hear things. So having a way where you can actually get to try more stuff without having to take out a second mortgage, is I think what makes this hobby, it keeps me in the hobby, keeps me interested, and keeps it accessible.
Well, I think too, it's just speaking about like finding your sound and finding what works for you. Like I almost always want to do, like I want at least two of something, so I can go, do I like this one or do I like this one? And then I can make a decision. Like, because otherwise I just feel like in my head, I'm going, well, I don't know. I don't know if this is the one I like. Like,
Yeah.
I need something else to tell me whether I do or don't. So, and maybe that's just a weird compulsion, but I think probably if you're still watching this video, you probably have some of these compulsions. So I mean, if you're in this hobby, you probably have it. Like, right, if you're on YouTube looking for headphones, it probably means you want more than one set of headphones, right?
Yep.
If you've already bought your one set and you're done, you're probably not here trying to figure out how to buy more, right?
And congratulations to you.
Yeah. Congratulations.
You got a lot of time you can do other things with, so great. Yeah, I will say the last thing, and doesn't have to be the last thing, but you'd sort of mentioned that, good sellers will follow up, they'll check the progress, they'll make sure the thing arrived. I think it's also on the buyer's side to be, good about sort of closing the loop on the transaction. So, just be a decent person, reach out and say, hey, I got the box today. I haven't got a chance to open it. I'm going to try them tomorrow. I'll let you know if everything's cool. Hey, tried it. Everything's great. Thanks for smooth transaction. And then, most of these sites, this community works on feedback. Like, leave feedback. If you had a bump, if it didn't go perfectly smooth, it's okay to say that. You're not being a bad person. You're not like calling the person out or throwing them under the bus. Be like, hey, it took the seller a long time to actually get it packed up and shipped out, and I didn't really hear from them. So, but I got it and it's in good shape. So I think they're cool. It's fine to you can add some critical feedback if you want.
Just be honest. Yeah. Just honesty,
be honest. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's all there is to it. And I do, and it does help people out, right? To give feedback too. And it's okay. It's okay to ask for feedback too. Like, hey, would you mind? I'll leave you like that. A lot of the times the transaction will go like, oh, I got it. Thank you. I went ahead and left you feedback. It'd be cool if you left me some too. That'd be great. Like, and that's a lot of times how the transactions end. I will say too, like that like people remember, and I don't know about you, but there's lots of people that I've done business with like multiple times, both buying and selling with, where like, what's kind of cool is, if you find somebody that like, well, I guess on my end, I'm going like, if I find somebody that likes to buy gear and then I know they take good care of it and then they sell it at good prices, then I know instantly next time if they list a few things for sale, I'm like, ooh, I can buy from them. Like, and then I don't even have to worry about it, So you kind of like, after you do it a while, you kind of establish these relationships and you just kind of get to know people. People will, a lot of times I'll find if I post something on a forum, like somebody will comment on it. Oh, this dude's a good seller, like don't be afraid to buy from him, or that's a great price. You should, don't hesitate. Or so a lot of stuff like that happens too. And it's just, as long as you're decent to people, like I think for the most part it works out in this community. I mean, there might be some very rare occasions where somebody's trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes, but I think, I don't
It's
know.
hard in the
Have you
community
had
environment.
any bad? I mean, what's your
I
worst? Let's go into the negatives here just before we close it out, right? Like,
Yeah,
what's your worst buying experience?
I think worst is like when the shipping goes wrong. That seems to be especially like in early COVID times when shipping just got crazy in the
Oh,
States, and especially USPS, like things would just like sit, they just fall
for
off of
like 3
tracking.
weeks. Yeah, I had a couple of those. Yeah.
It was really tough because it's like it's like I'm not blaming the seller, but in my mind, and maybe you feel differently, until the item's in my hand, it's the seller's responsibility.
Yeah.
Like that's how I see the transaction. That's when I sell stuff, that's my philosophy is like if something happens to it en route, that's on me. I should have bought insurance to cover myself. If I didn't, that's on me, you know? So, in those times where you're like waiting on a piece of gear and the shipping's getting crazy and you're trying to keep your cool, um, you know, know that like try to be patient with the seller. They don't have any control over it. And at the point, if it is that bad situation, if it does unfold that it's like, look, the package is lost, then I mean, I think you're well within your rights to ask the seller to issue you a refund because the transaction didn't complete. That sucks. It sucks for everyone, but I think for me, that's how I feel the fairness should go on all that, the fairness of the unfairness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's the worst stuff I've had to deal with is just. I mean, I've gotten things where like the condition wasn't quite as good as the seller made it seem, and again, I feel like that's a little bit on me though, because like where the picture is shot in a dark bedroom at night, and I didn't say, hey, can you send a few more pictures? I think there's nothing like you got to get in the habit of, even though it feels a little whiny, to just be like, so hey, I didn't see in the description like much detail on the condition or when you got them or where they came. Like it's okay to ask people questions about,
Yeah.
and just do that double check. Do you have the packaging? Do you have this cable? Do you have the stuff? And if they're a good seller, they'll take the time. They're about to take your money, so they can take the time to be like, oh yeah, I have that. I don't have that. Oh, thanks for asking. Yeah, there's a little nick right here. I'll send you a picture. So I think the times where the transactions haven't gone as well as I would like are shipping, which is like out of everyone's control, or condition misalignments, expectation misalignments, which I take partial responsibility for as well.
I would say, I mean, shipping, it's always frustrating if something takes a long time to ship. Of course, with Amazon now, like even if it takes like 4 days to get here, that seems like a long time
Ah,
sometimes, but I'd say my worst is I had one headphone arrive broken, um, which it didn't seem like from my back and forth with the seller, it didn't seem like it left broken. Like that was the honest impression that I got from him.
mhm.
And he was and we were able to work it out pricing and stuff too. So like I ended up sending him in to get repaired to the company, but he refunded me like more than that cost to make
Mm,
up for my inconvenience. So like it was able to be worked out. Like I've never had a transaction go bad enough that like I've never left negative feedback like for anybody doing this. Like I've never
yeah,
had a transaction go that poorly.
yeah.
I've had there was one headphone that arrived and I opened it up and it smelled like a little weird, but it was just like maybe it had been boxed up for a really long time or something. I don't know. Just very, very minor stuff for the most part. Nothing that either like a good pad washing or just like letting it sit out to like air out for like a day wouldn't solve. So
Yep,
so
yep.
generally not any big issues on my end.
Good, good. Well, I think
Um
that's probably if you ask, 9 out of 10 headphone enthusiasts, they'd probably have the same thing to say, and that's a good thing. It is a pretty impressive community. And
it
and
is
I'm
as heated as some discussions can get. I think when it comes down to it, most people are there because they care and they want to help someone else like find the right thing for them,
Yeah, I think
in a
so.
lot of cases.
I think so.
In a lot of
Cool.
cases. Well, that's probably a good place to end the buying segment, I would say, don't you
That's
think?
right.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
I mean, you can I just reiterate, it maybe isn't for everybody, but you can, significantly reduce your costs if you pay attention, if you pay attention, you're patient, You pick a price that you're willing to pay, and you just kind of watch for it, wait for it, and make an informed decision. Don't make an impulse buy, make an informed, decision.
Yeah, trust your gut. I mean, I
Yep.
think the only times it's gotten a little squirrely is when I said I got impatient or I got impulsive and I didn't trust my gut. And you have to be, you have to live with your purchase. Like you have to live with the consequences of that. That money is going out of your wallet. You're getting a piece of gear. Make sure you want the gear. Make sure you're comfortable with the price. Make sure you're comfortable with the seller. Like there's no need to rush. Things will come up again. It feels like that's the thing. It's a little bit like it gives you that frenzy of like gambling where it's like, this is the only time I'm ever gonna see
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And like I can't tell you how many times I wanted a piece of gear. It doesn't come up for months and months and months, and then like three come up in the same week. It's like, your slots will come up if you if you can just chill for a minute.
Yeah. It does kind of seem to go in waves, doesn't it? Yeah.
Definitely.
But yeah, buy use. You're probably going to be fine. It would be my final word on it.
And if not, you'll personally cover their cost, right?
If they're buying from me.
All right, so that was our conversation. I hope you found something useful in that. Again, I appreciate you being here and listening, and certainly subscribe, comment. How do you buy and sell? You have any advice, any other questions that we missed? Definitely drop those down below. And again, don't forget to check out the selling piece that's over on Sine Craft's channel. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one.